Welcome to a new update. Today we talk about the boring price action that we call Bitcoin. Bitcoin miners are doing well. Coinbase is doing well. We've had the XRP ruling last week, which said that XRP is not a security. But instead of moving upwards, we currently have a case where the markets are correcting. So we're going to look at potential levels and scenarios for Bitcoin to actually trade through. And we're going to look at a case how you can define your own entries, how you can define your TPs, what we're going to look at in terms of having a correction, how far it will go as currently, and that is always what happens when the markets are getting into range lows. We see a case where people start to become ultra bearish. While on the other hand, we see that more institutions are jumping into the markets. We see that the ETP that is into Europe has increased and that the underlying amount of Bitcoin has increased substantially, through which having a correction in an uptrend is still mostly bullish for the markets and price will start to pick up at some point. But for now we are at range lows, so we might be having some more downwards momentum. We're going to discuss that. But before we continue, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also check out our premium membership, which we have, and you can test it for 1 week for free. Last month we've done 21R, which is 21% of your portfolio if you risk 1%. And additionally, this month we are already up 13R, so we're doing really well. When we're looking at the price action of Bitcoin, we can conclude that we have been making a range construction, right? So I've just got a clean chart here, which describes what levels we have and what we are looking at in terms of potential breakouts, trading, etc., etc. So initially we've had a case of a breakout through June, in which we have been chopping south as well. We took out liquidity, retested this order block here, which was the previous high of this construction here in February. And we started to rally up to take out all the liquidity that we had here, as we barely broke above this high at 31k. And then we started consolidating, as right now we are into this structure for 27 days, which is very boring. When we're looking at important levels, additionally, we've got this previous high here at 31.7, which we barely tested. And we've got the 32.5 level here. That is also still ready to be breaking out. I actually cannot make the actual wick here, 32.5, which means that if Bitcoin breaks above these two levels here, that is when the actual acceleration starts to kick in, as we've got this entire gap in the chart here, right? So we can actually start increasing towards 37.5 or take out the high at 40k. So those are the targets once we break through these two resistance zones. So we've had this run, and since then we've started establishing ourselves into this range construction, which means we've got consolidation, taking out the high which we had here through this move, in which we have been retesting and started to make ourselves this range construction. So you can actually say that this high is the range high at 31.4, and we've got this range low at I would say two levels, which is 30k, but we also have this low here, 29.5. So that's the range area that we're looking at, 31.4 to 31.8, and we've got 29.5 to 30k. Now, in this range construction, you need liquidity to move to the other side. So what do we see here? We've had this wick at 29.5, taking out the liquidity beneath the lows, immediately bounced back up, through which we got a test at 31.5, taking liquidity above the highs here, and then we started to drop back south. So the market makers are doing fine at this point. The news came out, which means that we've had this case of a breakout to the upside, in which we took out the liquidity again, started breaking south in the range, closed the gap, dropped beneath this low, and actually we have been taking out all these lows here, but we couldn't really find the high volume liquidity that we require to actually go back up to the range high. So what are the scenarios right now? Well, there are a few. First of all, we've got this low at 29.5, and when we start to zoom in on lower time frames, we've got this block at 28.92, which is untested. through which it seems very likely that we're going to get a case of taking out the liquidity beneath the lows here and have a correction towards 29k, or at least anywhere in this range, because that's where the liquidity lies and that's where the actual volume starts to kick in. So if there is going to be a correction towards those ranges, I think that is your first level where you want to start searching for your long points. If this continuation of rollover is going to happen for Bitcoin, this is definitely the key zone. And I think it's the most favorable zone that most of the markets are looking at in terms of the overcrowded trade. So that's where the tricky part comes in. If we're looking at a potential case of this movement or trade perspective, you can see that we've had the exact same move in March, in which we had been having this upwards construction, in which we have been taking the liquidity above the highs on a constant flow, started breaking south, and then we started to roll over to test the actual previous high, in which we retest here, grab liquidity and reversed back up. We had a more extreme one in March, which resulted into bearish retest and taking liquidity, and then started to take out all these lows before we started to run back up in a faster manner, through which, if we're going to have that, you could target a low at 24.8 to be taken. In the current construction, I think it's not feasible to have that scenario. But if you are looking at a case of the March one, 24.8 to 23.8 is the one to look for. But if you're looking at a case of the February one, in which we just take the liquidity beneath the lows, then you're probably aiming at a retest of this range high or previous highs, which is 28.4 to 29.5k. So this is the zone that we have been saying here has a lot of confluences in terms of your long entry. Second, if we are not granting ourselves that, what do I want to see? Well, a few cases are possible. In case we have a wick south and we take out 29.6 and we barely take out 29.5, but we immediately, or we get high volume and then immediately reverse back up, in which we get a candle to 29.4, bounce back up and reclaim 30k, that is probably your trigger that we're going to take out the highs here and get ourselves towards the range high. In that case, you need to be on the spot and be manual, because if we take the sweep and reclaim 30k, that is the second scenario that you could be looking for. The final scenario of taking the approach here is that you are not looking for a knife catching, or you're not looking to get that sweep and then 30k, but you're looking for a case where we break above 30.3k, which is the crucial resistance zone that we have lying here, and then you're going to take the target towards the range high. And if we get towards that range high, that is ultimately the case that we have got a high chance of breaking upwards instead of downwards, because then if we have been taking the liquidity beneath the lows and get towards the range high, that's usually a conclusion that we continue to move. That's the update for today. I'll be back on Thursday discussing macroeconomics. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Ciao.